This is a bit unusual. I'm just breaking off from recording my video cast with you. Just to say, this one comes in two parts because I did some of it yesterday, then realised I didn't have the full story. Well, the story was progressing in real time as we were doing this. So I've given you part two because I didn't want to give you kind of an inaccurate selection. I'd rather give you the whole, the whole dish. So take a look at this. Thank you. Hello. Welcome along. It's been a little while since we did an Adventures in Pop, and it's lovely to see you. I don't know where you've been, but we're all together now. And in this episode, I want to talk about Spotify, about Neil Young, Joni Mitchell, and I've also got a rather lovely video collection, particularly if, as it goes, you're not on Spotify. Well, you may have noticed in the news, and I think it is worth commenting on because I'm really interested in Spotify and their kind of, their place in the world, their behaviour, their performance, all the rest of it. So let's start at the beginning. For those not quite up to speed with the kind of the situation, I think it's worth saying Spotify have become the world dominant kind of body of the music industry. I really think that as record companies have gone into decline, as we've moved away from physical formats, as we've even moved away from downloading, and it's all about streaming, and it really is all about streaming. Spotify has come to the fore. It was in there pretty early. It has, all its famous algorithms, and even though you can now sign up to Apple Music if you want to. You can sign up to Amazon Music. There are countless other platforms. There's Deezer, there's Tidal, and many, many more. Spotify is overwhelmingly the biggest and the most influential. And what Spotify have done recently is to slightly diversify. I think it wasn't obviously enough for them to control all of the world's music. They decided it was probably a very good time for them to get into podcasts. And you are probably aware that podcasts have been becoming very popular. And in particular, what this story is about is the fact that Spotify signed up to an exclusive deal with Spotify, i.e. to only make his podcasts available through Spotify. They signed the American YouTuber, I guess, I'm not quite sure what to call him. I suppose disruptor. They signed Joe Rogan with a lot of money. I mean, a big £1 million contract to have all of his podcasts distributed from Spotify. They felt that was really big business. And just to put it into context, Joe Rogan, who is somebody I don't know very well, so don't press me too much on that. But Joe Rogan is way the biggest podcaster in the world right now. He has the widest audience, arguably the most influence, and hence the problem. Because Joe Rogan, as well as being obviously, I'm sure, a fun entertainer, he is also a communicator of kind of, recently it's been anti-vax lies. And what's happened here is that Neil Young and Joni Mitchell, and again, if you're not quite sure who they are, very big recording artists, American recording artists, actually, I should say Canadian recording artists. Take myself out and slap myself down. Canadian recording artists from the 70s, with global success, global followings, but obviously of a different generation than today. Neil Young did it first. Let's give him credit for this. He said, it's Joe Rogan or Neil Young. You can't have both. And he was particularly taking issue with this whole business about, the content of Joe Rogan's podcast, and particularly in a pandemic. I think, and let me say quite rightly, that Neil Young took issue with Joe Rogan rather casually distributing misinformation. And to be fair, okay, I want to be as fair as I can be. it is true to say Joe Rogan distributed misinformation, because Joe Rogan himself, I think, has realised that is the case and has apologised. But the trouble is, it won't stop him from doing it again. And often the damage is done. People will just believe it, and they're out there continuing to talk up some of the real dangerous anti-vax nonsense. So these two people, Joni Mitchell, Neil Young, both asked Spotify to take all of their music off the platform, and Spotify did. What they hoped would happen then would be that other artists would follow. There'd be kind of an avalanche of protest, and actually what they wanted was not for them to be taken off the platform, but for Joe Rogan to be taken off the platform. But they were basically saying you can't have both. Now, faced with this conundrum, Spotify did what Spotify were obviously going to do: follow the money. And however large, however fantastic the contribution of Neil Young and Joni Mitchell to the wider canon of rock music, it doesn't stand up today in terms of audience numbers, sadly, to the kind of pull that Joe Rogan is able to, muster around the world. They're following the money. As I say, that this is a commercial decision. Keep Joe Rogan, lose Neil Young and Joni Mitchell. Now, some might say that Neil Young and Joni Mitchell are being, they're being hasty. They're acting against, the norms of free speech, for example. And yeah, I would say, yes, you've got a point, but I think free speech has to have some outer boundaries. There must be a line that you draw where you say that's not acceptable. And look, I'm really genuinely for as much free speech as possible. I mean, I would die in a ditch for free speech, but there is a boundary, and that is, when your free speech starts to not so much to be at the detriment, but I mean to actually be dangerous to communities of people. I think at that point you have to start wondering, what's the value of that free speech. And there are too many people at the moment searching for different answers, and therefore finding on YouTube and amongst all the many people who push themselves forward, who believe they have they found the answer to the questions that we can't answer in the world. There are too many people getting hooked into all kinds of crazy stuff that they find on YouTube and other places. Now look, one little side effect with this, and I think it's just worth pointing it out because it's funny. James Blunt. Now you remember James Blunt. He's the Brit who in the noughties had a huge hit with You're Beautiful. Beautiful, that one. Really not my favourite singer. I think that's an understatement, which is why I'm just hesitating how to finish this sentence. But James Blunt, okay. The thing you can say about him, I never really want to listen to any of his albums ever, but he has a fantastic sense of humour. So he joined in on this whole piece about, Joe Rogan and Spotify, and whether it's okay for Spotify to be communicating this kind of nonsense on their platform. He weighed in, but James Blunt is not Neil Young and Joni Mitchell. James Blunt is, he had one phenomenally large selling album, and that's really been about it. I don't mean to diss his other works, but in terms of commercialism, that is really what he's known for. Well, anyway, he weighed in and said, in his fabulous way, with you've just got to take your hat off his sense of humour. He said that if Spotify don't remove Joe Rogan, then he would put another album out. You've got to hand it to him. Well, James, that's really good. Love that. So where does that leave me? I'm a very little pinprick on the surface of Spotify, almost I should imagine invisible. So it's not going to make much difference if I boycott it. Now, it reminds me of a story that I quite like telling still because it's true and I'm still doing it. So, as a comparison, let me just share this. Many, many years ago, I think we're probably talking about the 90s, I went to Harrods to do some shopping. At least I thought I was going to Harrods to do some shopping. When I reached the entrance of Harrods, a security man stopped me from going into Harrods because my jeans had a hole in. Now, this is the 90s. I mean, it's still pretty much the fashion today, but it was certainly fashionable to have, your jeans would be completely shredded. Um, I had a hole in my jeans. It wasn't indecent. I'm not that kind of guy. But anyway, the security guy said, "You're not coming here with those jeans with those holes in." And I said, "Look, I can understand you've got some standards that you have to set for your staff. Um, I'm a member of the public. I'm just coming in to buy stuff. I'm coming in to give you money, essentially." He said, "No, no, you're not coming in." I said, "Okay. In that case, I will never, ever, ever come back." Now, obviously, what I wanted was for him to quiver in his boots and say, "Listen, right, let me hang on, hold on a moment. Don't make any hasty decisions." He didn't do that. He just turned his back and dealt with something else. But true to my word, I have never gone back to Harrods, and I never will. And I say that because it's kind of amusing, but it's also, you know, just get a grip for a moment. What is the effect I have had on Harrods? Yeah, none. And similar would be the situation if I decided from here on in I was going to boycott the one way that I could possibly get ahead in the music industry. Um, hey, and I'm not staying for the money because, as you might know from earlier editions of Adventures in Pop, and I think we discussed this really quite early on, the amount that I earn from Spotify, along with everybody else, let's face it, I'm not being paid on a worse rate than anybody else, but it's pennies and it's a very small amount indeed. So just to keep all those things in perspective, I salute Neil Young and Joni Mitchell for the stand that they've made. If you don't know their work, go and check out Blue or Hajira by Joni Mitchell. Go and check out After the Gold Rush, my favourite Neil Young album, which I remember buying in the 1970s. And they have, both those artists have a fabulous body of work behind them. So there. Okay. The thing about this is Spotify has become so big, it is going to be, it's going to be scrutinized in the same way that people scrutinize YouTube and Twitter and all the rest of it, because they have a role to play and they can't just make money without having some responsibility towards what it is they're allowing to get published on their platform. Hello again. Look, this is a rather unusual situation. I finished recording my videocast number 51 yesterday, but after I'd kind of processed it and got it ready to launch onto YouTube, it kind of became obvious to me that there was afters. There's quite a lot more information that just popped out yesterday evening, if I'm really honest. So I'm sorry about this, but I would be. I think I'd be rather inaccurate if I just left what I'd put out as my offering on this matter. So quite a lot of other things have happened. So apart from Neil Young and Joni Mitchell, what's happened now? And I just want to be really accurate with this because I've got it here in front of me. So excuse me if I kind of reading bits, but I think it's probably the best way to give you a good, accurate flavour of what is being reported. Graham Nash, who was also, if you think about, it's Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, there he is. He was founding member of the Hollies, actually. Graham Nash has joined his bandmate, taking his music off Spotify. So that's one. India Arie also has asked for her music to be taken off. But she's added a sort of an extra qualification around why she's not happy with Joe Rogan's content. And she says, I've decided to pull my music and podcast from Spotify. Neil Young opened a door that I must walk through. I believe in freedom of speech. However, this is the point we were making earlier. However, I find Joe Rogan problematic for reasons other than his COVID interviews. For me, it's also his language around race. What am I talking about is respect. Who gets it and who doesn't? Paying musicians a fraction of a penny and him 100 million? This shows the type of company they are and the kind of company they keep. I'm tired. India Arie. Apparently, Niels Lofgren has also voiced support for Joni Mitchell and Neil Young. Now, look, here's the thing: those are hardly big names, so it's not really going to change Spotify's approach that they've had. An angry response from India Arie, Graham Nash, Niels Lofgren. Yeah, okay, that's not going to change much. But a couple of things to bear in mind. It's also drawn a response from Harry and Meghan. That's more interesting because, if you're talking about widespread coverage and appeal and names that are known to everyone around the planet, then, Harry and Meghan were getting a bit closer to something that Spotify might need to take notice of. I think they've only sort of mumble to grumble. I don't think it's exactly out there saying, we're going to march on Spotify's office. I don't think we're quite at that stage yet. And the other thing I think it is worth noting, for fairness, is that Spotify has responded to the furor by appending resources with correct COVID-19 information to podcasts on the subject. Appending resources. In other words, they're kind of putting a bit of a look. If you want to know about COVID, if you really want to know about COVID without the misinformation and the lies, why don't you have a look at this? That's what they're doing to try and, not get themselves into a real pickle over this. I think this one's going to run and run, and thank you for, bearing me out on my little extra piece here, because otherwise I fear that I was only giving you half the picture. This is going to change, probably daily, but as of now, that's where we're at. Thank you. All right. Listen, last thing before I go, and I just mentioned it at the very beginning, what I've done in the last few days is just string all of my videos from the last year. So basically all the tracks that are now part of Me and My Big Mouth that came out on Friday. I heartily recommend you go and have a listen to that. My 4th album, very proud of that, and it's doing okay. Strung all the videos together. So for those people who are not on Spotify or Apple Music and all the rest of it, an easy way to access my music is simply to have a listen to a YouTube playlist that is called Me and My Big Mouth. I'll put the link in onto this video itself, and make sure you catch it. It's about 48 minutes of songs, 12 songs, and those of you who've been coming the distance with me, apart from thanking you, you'll know them anyway, or at least you'll know most of them. So take a listen. That's the 4th album, Me and My Big Mouth, and it now all available on a video playlist. Isn't that exciting? Good. It's been lovely. We're going to do this all again very, very soon. And in the meantime, stay well, take care of yourself, listen to Joni Mitchell and Neil Young, and see you soon.